Four of us arrived at Capitol Hill around 10 this morning, then started the 16-block walk to the White House to hear the president's speech. I wanted to see how many people were coming to town for the rally and get some good footage. The streets were pretty empty at that time, and we saw a very small group of people rallying on the back of the Capitol. We'd been told there were about a dozen different rallies. All had different speakers and went by different names. For us, it was about the location. Since we parked on the hill, on the Senate side, we wanted to end up there at the end of the day. It took about 40 minutes to walk from the Capitol to the White House, and the entire way it was packed with fun, energized, polite fellow Americans carrying American flags and various other signs that signified they were not convinced the election was done properly. We saw police hanging out on corners. We smiled and waved and thanked them for their service when we got close enough. We saw a group of about 4 National Guard members and gave them a welcome thank you also. As we got closer to the White House, the president was about 45 minutes late in speaking, but everyone was patient and enjoying the festive environment. After he finally started speaking, we stayed for about 20 minutes because we were having a hard time hearing. He said something about seeing everyone on the Hill after his speech. Everyone had planned to go back up there anyway because of the several rallies that were going on in that general direction. We started the walk back to the Hill thinking we could get some good photos of him speaking and hear it better. Well, pretty much everyone else was thinking the same thing as the group on the edge of the large group started heading back to the Capitol. There was excitement in the air as people hurried up Constitution Avenue to come in through the large, wide sidewalk or walkway up the steps to the Capitol. I was hurrying to get some great shots and saw a fence down next to the big sidewalk. There were no police, not one at that entrance. I thought that was odd. They were allowing people to just come into the lawn and walk over barriers. I was really thinking someone would tell us to go in another area, like they always do on the Hill. You can't just roam around like this without 5 policemen yelling at you. It was as though everyone was being encouraged to run up to the stage and get a good space to hear the upcoming speech. It was hard to keep up with them as they walked rapidly into the front, but I ran alongside on the grass getting some great motion shots. There was no sign of barriers anywhere, other than that little green plastic fence on the ground that we walked over. Everyone just walked down the sidewalk, over the little bridge, then toward the front of the Capitol. There was not a feeling that you were breaking the law or anything. It was more like they were told there was free pizza at the steps of the Capitol, and that was where everyone was headed, to get a good position near the podium to hear the president. They all stopped when at the end of the line because we couldn't go any further. We stayed like that the entire time, even after people were beckoning people to push in further. That happened several times along the way, but no one followed them. I overheard a man on a phone talking about almost being ready for a coded move. I glanced at him and he turned his back. He said something about using water cannons and tasers to control them. The 4 of us just kept moving as close as we could, getting great shots. Everyone was talking about Trump saying he was going to be coming to the Capitol to speak. We weren't sure. But we knew with all these people, there was no way they would be able to get through the crowd. But it looked like a podium was ready for a speaker, so maybe he was coming. I was just focused on getting some great shots. The crowd grew thicker, but it was still the same group of happy warriors singing songs, chanting USA. That was when the 12 militia-type people went over the short wall right next to us on the command of someone who said that it was ready for them to go. I was standing on the little wall that was on the left side of the wide sidewalk, right at the corner where you would turn left, so I was as close as you could get and still say hi to get some pictures. It was about then that the flashbangs started. We were shocked, since there was no violence at all. Everyone was just standing there. They kept shooting them, some with ear-piercing persistence. Then when we saw a green plume of smoke, we were convinced it was tear gas and decided to leave. 2 of us immediately got scratchy throats, but thankfully didn't have eye issues. That was at about 1:45. We left the Capitol and walked about 7 minutes to a building we were staying in behind the Supreme Court. The TV was was on, and it was showing that the Capitol was being breached. Guns had been drawn by the Secret Service. People were forced on the ground. All incidents had wonderful photos of each event. Why were so many photographers allowed to breach the Capitol? How did the protesters get into a secure building that makes everyone practically stripped to get in, especially carrying flagpoles, backpacks, etc.? You can't carry things like that into the rotunda. Yet there was a line of people peacefully walking through the rotunda with all these elements. Where were the barriers? Where were the police and guards? There were none. It's as though the people walked in going, okay, where do we go now? Where does the tour start? They literally looked like tourists. I knew many people who came to the rally and had been on this phone with them, all of them, so that we could meet up later. They were all in front of the Capitol and some on the backside, and did hear the flashbangs and the smoke, but said there was no violence outside the Capitol where they were. They were right where the video was showing barriers being breached, with the riot police pushing back against them. They said the same thing we did. There were no barriers. There were no police. One man said they were actually buzzed into the back of the Capitol and just started wandering around. Yet I think it must be the crypt from the way they described it. They didn't hear or see any violence, no signs of police or guards. Several followed them in like that, but they said it was like being on a tour of the Capitol. This is borne out by photos that were being shown on TV, like the selfie taken with the guard and a protester, or the one with the man in fur doing a kind of dance in front of some police just standing there smiling. We had seen a battalion of heavily armed police running double time outside all over the Capitol, up and down the steps, totally in view of all of us, but not one is left inside the Capitol to keep a crowd from coming in from the outside. I still want to know how there were so many photographers staged all over the inside of the Capitol to get every single move, every single action, as though they were with a camera crew, as though the whole thing had been, directed, written, orchestrated, scripted. Hey, I'm a producer. That's how I think. But it's just so odd there were not enough police inside to prevent the breach or to keep the people from doing whatever they were doing, posing for selfies. And on the back of the Capitol, while this breach was supposed to be occurring inside, you see a line of police just hanging out on the steps with the protesters. They look like they're in a choir or something, certainly not concerned about riots happening inside. I don't see how that happened the way it is shown. Again, I make movies and understand how easy it is to stage anything you want people to believe. First big thing, there was no press outside, just tens of thousands of people with their cell phones. There were people like me with larger cameras, but the video of the skirmish looks too choreographed. And where did those agitators come from, unless they were the 12 we saw climb over the wall and head in that direction, making their way through the crowd toward the front where the flashbangs were coming from? I mean, they clearly were the agitators that you're seeing in the videos, right along with the clueless Trump protesters who are walking in benignly going, what in the world are we doing here? It's like two different movies were being shot simultaneously. One group of people knew exactly what was going on. The other group were clueless. They were what you call extras in a movie. They were a great backdrop. Like all the people, the hundreds of thousands of people out the front that were standing there waiting for a speech. They were just waiting peacefully. It just doesn't make any sense. The most logical explanation is that it was professionals who were ordered to infiltrate in order to control the debate, turn the tables on Trump supporters to make them look like radical anarchists, like Antifa and BLM, two groups that have gotten a bye all year as far as their violent rioting goes. Not one word from these sanctimonious talking heads on TV about how disturbing, despicable, embarrassing, upsetting, etc., about the attack on the White House, the statues in Lafayette Park, the defacing of the road in Lafayette Park, the defacing of the road in front of it, the setting on fire of a church across from the White House. Where was the outrage when that attack on our democracy occurred? What about all the attacks of private citizens and even elected officials coming from the White House after the RNC revised convention? They were told not to go out at night. It's too dangerous. It's their own fault for being attacked, etc. Even a U.S. senator was attacked. Nothing was said. No outrage. If they can condemn and marginalize all Trump supporters and constitutionalists while pinning the moniker of anarchists on this group instead of BLM and Antifa, then they win. Here is what outraged Democrats have said about pushing back against Republicans and anyone who disagrees with them. Cuomo says, "Show me where protesters are supposed to be polite and peaceful." Maxine says, "If you see anyone from the cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, and a gasoline station, you get out and create a crowd, you push back on them, you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere." Nancy says, "People do what they do." This is in reference to tearing down statues. She doesn't have much use for statues, she claims. Well, maybe until a Trump supporter tears one down, then suddenly she's going to be a statue hugger. Biden says, "If you were in high school, I'd beat the hell out of him." Oh, and his supporters are dog-faced pony soldiers, whatever that is. Kamala Harris says these protesters should not let up. Well, she wasn't meaning Trump protesters. She was meaning the BLM and the Antifa protesters. Presley says, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives. Gee, a lot of people agree with you on that one. Ayanna, I think her name is. Nancy also says, "I just don't know why there aren't uprisings all over the country. Maybe there needs to be." Again, that was not encouraging Trump protesters. That was encouraging Antifa and BLM. So there are double standards. We all agree with that. The media is painting every single one of these peaceful protesters in attendance today as an embarrassment, a shame to democracy, not the American way. No, the American way is get your facts straight before going off hack-baked with very questionable evidence. There were hundreds of thousands of Americans who have been beaten down, lied to, cheated, defamed, marginalized, and ridiculed, and all they wanted was to have the right to be heard, to express their views and opinions. They can't be held responsible for what a few infiltrating agitators do to their rally. I'm ashamed of those elected officials who would condemn this group, defining everyone who was there as an anarchist or an un-American criminal. This group has watched as these same politicians have turned a blind eye to the BLM and Antifa violence, suggesting it's a summer of love, giving them the room to express themselves, etc., etc. I must say, when the police in full riot gear were shooting flashbangs into a totally helpless, unarmed, and non-dangerous crowd, it was very frustrating and frankly insulting, as this group was practicing their First Amendment rights to protest what they see as unfair, yet are now being disparaged as despicable anarchists.
Forget the men who died who gave that right to me, until we stand up next to you and defend still is gonna hate, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
What's going on over there? Are you safe? I'm going, yeah, they were singing Amazing Grace. All my nieces leading them in Amazing Grace. That's all you heard was the song Amazing Grace. And at the same time, they're showing on TV these massive, riot things going on. And then
there's so many unanswered questions, like why did the police take barriers down and let the rioters in? Were these the agitator plants that many had seen, 40 deep, being escorted off a bus, all Antifa? What about all the footage of the patriots stopping the violence, Antifa rioters from busting through windows and destroying property? Where are the police or guards at the doors? Everyone said they just walked in, some thinking it was great to be able to be this far across the country and get a tour of the Capitol. A man in the back of the Capitol said they were buzzed in and no one was there to, quote, greet them or turn them back. There's footage of the police getting selfies with protesters, or smiling as a man in animal skins does a dance, or leading them down the hall and encouraging them to keep up.
News cameras, journalists everywhere, but yet, take a look at this. Look, they running in. And this is the video that I'm talking about. That looks staged as hell. Come on in. Then he drops his baton and just picks it up. Why are you not using
don't
your
follow
spray?
me, everybody.
Right. Why are you not using your spray or your taser?
Well, watch. They talk at the top of the stairs, too. Watch.
This is ridiculous.
Now he's running away. Looks like if you look at the arm, the sleeve of that person that was recording, it looks like it's the same uniform that he has on.
Yeah, look. Now they talk. like, hey, catches them. Let's go.
Yeah, come on, guys.
Follow me.
Don't be late.
I'll show you how to get there.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
So safe.
There's so many unanswered questions, and I would encourage our elected officials who were being protected in a room for 4 hours to get to the facts, get to the bottom of this, because something is not adding up. And it's not fair to judge all of these people and say they were all violent rioters when they just wanted to make their voices be heard.